So, aliens.
Aliens.
For them or against them?
I actually love aliens.
Do ya?
I encourage them.
Oh. You just got those face huggers waiting at home for you, and you're like,
I do have a plush face hugger in my office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. It does match the decor. I've seen it before.
I should put it on one of the skulls.
You definitely should put it on one of the skulls.
Face hugging the skeleton on the wall.
Yep. This poor face hugger, very confused face hugger, who's like, why isn't it working? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's give some backstory here to our listeners, because I don't think we've talked about this. When I started here at the company, we were still in the old place, the Cosmere house, instead of the new office. And they said, you can decorate this any way you want. And I said, can I have a skeleton manacled to the wall? And Emily said, sure. Because there was a really cool stone wall in that office. And so they got me one, and it's a hemalurgic skeleton.
Yes, it's got
with
spikes
in it. And it looks super cool, and it's really gross. And it hung on that wall for like a week and a half. And then we moved to the new offices. And I have it here in my office, but it's on a very bright, pretty yellow wall instead of a creepy stone wall.
Fit quite as well.
Yeah.
But that's kind of nice. It's more shocking. You see a stone wall, you're like, oh, dungeon skeleton, yeah. You see a nice yellow wall, you're like, oh, well, oh. And there's a gross skeleton that's bloody hanging from it.
Yeah, and it's bloody enough that it's kind of orange, so it goes with the yellow wall. It's really nice.
So you pitched this episode. You want to talk about aliens?
Yeah, so I want to talk about, specifically, I want to talk about alien abduction narratives.
Okay, yep.
And I want to start off by saying we've talked about aliens before. I do believe they exist. I do not believe that they have visited Earth and abducted humans. I think you're in a similar...
I am in a similar
right?
state of mind. If aliens have visited Earth, they are not doing the abduction stuff. I don't think they have, but I would not be surprised if they have, like, you know, a superior technological race. It's like, oh, yeah, this planet, okay, and then left or whatever. But
yeah, they may have done that.
I don't think that happened either.
Okay.
I think FTL is too tough a nut to crack.
And so this is not going to be an episode where we are discussing the viability of alien abduction.
Nope.
What fascinates me and what I've been reading about for a couple of days, and I don't remember how I got onto this topic, is alien abduction stories as modern folklore.
Yes.
The idea that, it's very, very similar in a lot of ways to, the old European stories about changelings and fairies stealing your children or, messing with your house. It's a way to explain unexplainable things.
I've actually read a little bit about this myself, coincidentally. Not as preparation, but yeah. It is fascinating. It's fascinating how these stories happen, how they perpetuate themselves. It is fascinating that different regions have different aliens. That, like the German one's supposed to be famous. Do you know the German one?
In a lot of Scandinavian and Slavic and other Germanic countries, there is an alien type called the Nordic.
Okay.
Is that the one you're talking about?
All I know is I remember reading, like, the German one was a famous one that was very consistent.
Yeah, and it's kind of fallen out of popularity. But the really classic European alien visitation is what they called a Nordic. Okay. A little taller than a human, very pale skin, long blonde hair, blue eyes, and all very, paternal, maternal.
Okay.
They're caring and trying to help people.
So The Witcher. The Witcher
a little bit, yeah.
is visiting them, right? Wow,
yeah,
that's
but
so much better.
Presumably swearing less.
You wake up and Henry Cavill is there, and you're like, oh, I'm getting taken care of.
Yay.
And then over here...
we have the Greys.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I have always loved about alien abduction stories, or really any alien story, is the description of the Greys is so common that... most UFOologists, most people who research this, won't even take your story seriously if it doesn't have the Greys in it.
Interesting.
Because that's kind of the accepted thing now. And, I learned that a while ago. It may have changed. They may have branched out into other things.
So tell me in your research, because I remember trying to figure this out once, and I can't remember what I came up with or if I even got to an answer. were the Greys as prevalent pre the Spielbergian boom of gray-ish aliens? So Close Encounters, E.T., like share a little bit of a look. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, most of all. It's just like straight
really
up Greys.
Cemented that.
Yeah.
Greys have been around as the prevalent American alien description since the 50s.
Okay, so he based those designs off of what people think
People
aliens
were already
look like.
talking about. The first really big alien abduction story was in 1961.
Okay.
The Hills.
The Fire... The movie, The Fire...
Fire in the Sky is actually from the 70s.
Okay.
Based on a story from the 70s.
Okay.
That is widely recognized now as a hoax, in large part because it does not follow the accepted narrative.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
wait, the one that deviates from the... That's the one that's considered a hoax?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Because, I mean, it's considered a hoax for a lot of other reasons.
Okay. But by the ufologists.
Yeah. But one of the strikes against it is it doesn't follow the accepted pattern that we see in so many other stories.
Can you talk through that pattern?
Well, first, before we do that, and that is what I definitely want to do here, I wanted to say that actually descriptions of Greys have been around since H.G. Wells in the 1800s.
Okay.
You have to kind of squint a little, but his description of the Eloys from Time Machine are very Grey-esque.
Okay, I can see that, I suppose.
He also has another, like a short story or something, where he talks about Greys.
Because you don't see the creatures in the tripods from War of the Worlds.
And then they get described again in the 30s. They show up in some alien stories there.
Okay.
And were kind of already in the public consciousness for the 50s. One of the big things they say about the Hill abduction in 61 is that the description that the guy gave of his abduction came 12 days after an Outer Limits episode that showed gray aliens in it. And so that's one of the things a lot of people point to and say, oh, well, he just remembered that under hypnosis. So the Greys have been around for a very long time.
Which is so fascinating, right? Like, these aren't all hoaxes in that I don't think the majority of, well, I won't say majority. There are definitely people among these who are not just clout chasing. From my research, there are people who legitimately have had some sort of, and again, I don't believe it's actually an abduction. I believe it is one of these interesting mass hallucination things that we as human beings do, like the dancing epidemic that happened, or the wolves eating people epidemic in France, the seeing the wolves, and there was a real wolf, but they all turned it into a lion, and there were sightings of the lion, which was a wolf that had killed a few people.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, and the dancing epidemic is so fascinating. And now, people have these experiences that I think are legitimate experiences, but are a psychological phenomenon.
Yeah.
Which is so fascinating.
One of the statistics that I read is that this specific narrative that we're about to go through is common to about 75% of all alien abduction stories.
Okay.
And there's lots of other things. Every now and then, the reptilians will still show up and things like that. But modern stuff, 75% of them all fall into this same pattern of what the Greys do and how they do it, which I find really interesting.
But only in our region. They don't do it in other parts of the world.
The vast majority of this is all American.
That was one of the things that I heard about that I found most interesting from a folklore standpoint, is that this folklore is influencing us in ways that we don't always recognize.
Yeah. Well, and the giant machine that is American pop culture is spreading the Greys narrative around. So Greys will still show up all over the place. There have been some really famous ones in Brazil. They're kind of all over now, but still primarily United States.
Well, and they weren't all over until the pop culture machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I think might be interesting, and maybe we don't want to go this direction, is I'm going to go through kind of step by step, each step of the alien abduction pattern, and talk about what it is, and then we try to craft our own alien abduction
really
scenario
happens.
that is, completely different, or what really happens, or something like that. I don't know. So anyway, the first step is capture.
Okay.
And what's really obnoxious about this is that lots of abductees report feeling anxiety and the sense that something is coming, sometimes even several days before it happens. And others don't feel anything at all. But this idea that, like if you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they're all compelled to go to a specific place as if the aliens are reaching out to them, that is a common thing that a lot of people have. Whether they are pulled to a place or a particular time, or they just feel like something's coming and they don't know what it is, this kind of vague anxiety.
And sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis is one of the primary explanations for what's going on with aliens.
A lot of descriptions feel like sleep paralysis experiences. You ever had it before?
I have not.
I've had it one time. Felt sleep paralysis, and it is just legitimately freaky.
I
where
bet.
Your brain wakes up, but the parts of the awareness wakes up before the parts of your brain that control motor skills wake up. Your body, when it goes to sleep, kind of turns those off, so while you're dreaming, you don't act everything out. And it is possible to wake up and to be paralyzed because the parts of your brain that can respond. I had never experienced anything like it before, where I'm like, I try to move my arm and it just doesn't move. And I laid there and like my heart rate increased, and I'm like, and then I woke up and it was over. And I'd not read about sleep paralysis. I had no idea what had happened to me. And in the Middle Ages, people would often hallucinate a demon on their chest.
And that still happens modern day as well. Yeah. Where people will see a demon or a person in their house.
I saw nothing. Just woke up. One part of my brain didn't wake up as fast as the rest of the part of my brain, but it's to this day one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not had it.
So I have empathy for people who might be undergoing something like that and feel like they maybe just got dropped off their dream and whatnot, and they're like, I just got dropped off, and now the drugs that the aliens gave me are wearing off.
Yeah. So yeah, part of that is another part of capture is this sense of being unable to move. And the kind of consciousness shifting into this other state of where you are not in control of your own movements, whether you are sleepwalking or you're stuck in bed paralyzed or you're levitating somewhere. So
what's really going on with these aliens? Why would they want these random schmoes from this backwater planet? Like, what's legitimately
what's really going on?
What's really going on, Dan?
Yeah. Well, boy, I don't know.
Like, that's the question I have. Is like, assuming that this is actually true and our skepticism is misplaced. I mean, there are a lot of people who have these experiences. Well, why would the aliens care about us? Are we like, is the planet Earth, is it like from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where this is like a thing that they started up? We are the petri dish.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right.
We're their wildlife preserve.
Well, wildlife preserve definitely could be. But I would wonder if it's like, you do a petri dish, you're like, what happens if we do this? What happens if we take these things and then we give them social media? Oh, look, it's finally they finally reached the place. Now we're going to see what happens when we inject social media to them, to this primitive species who's not,
that is not equipped to deal with collective consciousness.
And then we can inject the the cure and see what happens in the petri dish if the cure is effective on these little microorganisms that yeah.
What if these abduction scenarios are happening because they have screwed up somehow?
Okay.
Like they have been accidentally polluting our population telepathically.
Okay.
And so they need to pick us up and clean us out and then send us back.
You're giving a kind of a telepathic soul enema to people to be like,
yeah,
this could be bad for them.
Well, and that is step 2 of the abduction narrative is examination.
Yes.
Whether that is physical or psychic or whatever is going on, it's very, very specific. And one of the things that I love about this is one of the researchers that talks about this says, that it's specific down to which parts of the body they tend to deal with. They don't seem to care about like your upper abdomen, but they're very interested in the lower abdomen. And he points out that they never wear gloves. They don't seem to be pills or injections or IVs. And he says he has never once heard an abductee claim to have a tongue depressor used on them.
Maybe this is performance art from the aliens. This is how they this is, or maybe this is just how they say hello. Maybe this is their greeting. They're just not getting it. Well, grab some more people from Ohio,
do some probing.
Ohio, and give them the traditional greeting. Maybe this group of them understands the traditional greeting of of space alien introductions.
They're so frustrated at our impoliteness.
Yeah.
They have been abducting us for decades.
We haven't abducted them back
We have never once abducted an alien.
They're like, what is going on? Why are you not doing this? We even didn't use the tongue depressors.
Yeah, they were so excited early on with the Roswell incident.
Yeah.
They're like, see, they will abduct us sometimes.
Yeah.
But then we've never repeated it.
It's just...
Bunch of jerks.
Mm-hmm. Or it could be, like I said, performance art. Like, all right, what we do is we go down to these monkeys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we do our thing, and we can't understand why that's performance art. I don't understand why most performance art is performance art. But it makes sense to them.
This is their rock concert.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are going to take one of these humans.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to perform a big hands-on test of their reproductive system. And then we're going to, there's tens of thousands of other aliens watching and saying, oh, yeah, this is really good. I love the way that this guy uses the probe.
Could be like alien version of cow tipping.
Just messing with us?
Yeah, just messing with us. It's like, all right, here's what we do. We're going human abducting. Like, no one really actually does that, do they? Because, cow tipping is like, you don't really go cow tipping, do you? And they're like, well, we're going to do it.
We're going to do it.
This
is the alien version of driving down the street and whacking mailboxes with a baseball bat.
That's right. Someone gave the teenage aliens the car keys. They're like, you know what we're doing tonight? Abducting some humans. They're like, do not go into that nature preserve and bother those humans. They're like, we're doing it.
We're trying to run an experiment.
How are we going to know how they react to TikTok if you keep interfering with the control? And yeah.
Or, maybe the massive rise in abduction scenarios in the 50s is a sign that that's when the experiment was just written off. And they're like, okay, we've learned all we can from this one. You can just screw with it now.
All right, let the teenagers go. Or what if this is all, we're going down the wrong path entirely. What if the aliens just want to sell merch? And, there is a lot.
There's a lot of alien
merch.
They have implanted the image of the Greys so solidly in our brains.
So they can sell us merch.
Yeah.
And
that's not necessarily what they look like. That's their mascot. That's their Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we made too many of these, and we need to sell them to the humans.
We got the franchise opportunity of Earth. So here's what we do. Here's our advertising. Go do your advertising. Enter the public unconscious so that People are always seeing these things, and then we charge Spielberg a little bit for the rights.
Mm-hmm. He cuts us in on the action.
He cuts them in, and he's like, "All right, I guess I have to use these things that look like your mascot. All right, how much is the rights?" And they're like, "Oh, 13 Beetleborgs." He's like, "All right, I guess I'll get you 13 Beetleborgs, and then we can use the gray likeness." X-Files, very big money for them.
Oh yeah,
but they could only afford the license now and then, and so most of the X-Files they have to deal with I don't know, a mother who lives under the floorboards.
Yeah, they got to do the creepy monster stuff, and then they're like, "Good news, we got the budget for another Alien episode.
We got the 3 Beetleborgs so that we can pay to have a quick shot of one of them in this." So, yeah.
And every now and then, a human will accidentally see a reptilian.
Yeah,
and we're like, no.
Yeah,
we got to downplay that one.
The reptilians, I mean. They're the competitors. They're the Burger King of But different regions have different, someone bought up Europe.
Yeah.
And they're like, "All right, Henry, we're gonna send you down to make sure that everybody knows what our mascot looks like."
Yeah.
So, or maybe I guess Henry's licensing the rights. From Sapkowski, who licensed them from the Germanic aliens.
They're coming up with all this new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're so excited to try it out.
Yep.
We're launching a big new campaign. I love that. Okay, so next in the process after examinations, there are a number of other procedures that sometimes happen, but don't always. Mm-hmm. So one that shows up a lot is almost like a psychological test where they show the abductees a series of images, whether that's on a screen or beamed into their head or holodeck or whatever it is. They see images, they see scenarios, and sometimes they just watch them, sometimes they participate in them.
Those are the product placements.
Yeah. Clearly that's what's going on. They're like, we want you to, or maybe it's a taste test.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're like, here's, Pepsi and Coke. But, in some alien version, it's a completely different thing.
So what do these things usually entail? Like, what are the pictures? Are there constant themes, or are there
there do not seem to be consistent themes that show up.
Okay.
Except that the abductees claim that their emotional reaction is the thing being tested.
Okay. So they're using getting some extra time in to be like, all right, which of these movies works for you?
Which of these works? One theme that I know does show up often is being presented with a machine and being asked to operate it.
Oh, interesting.
And trying to figure out what, they don't know what an alien machine does, but then once they start messing with it, they kind of figure it out.
Interesting. That does play into kind of some dream scenarios, similar dreams that lots of people have, which is another really interesting thing. Tangential to this is how often I think we've even talked about it before. People have the same dreams as other people independently. And whatnot.
And I think this is a common one. You are presented with a problem you don't know how to solve, and you just have to figure it out.
Yep.
So that's interesting. One of the things that another one that's common, maybe less common, but common enough to be a known one, is they present them with a child, which is more often than not an alien-human hybrid.
Okay.
And that leads, of course, to all the conspiracy theories about alien-human hybridization. That was one of the main plot lines in X-Files.
Yep.
Nobody knows why the Greys might be doing this, but it's a common one.
Interesting. So they're presenting them with the child. How does this play into what they're actually doing?
I think it might be flirting.
You think it's flirting?
I think that aliens, the way they propose marriage is they come up with a holographic representation of what our kids would look like.
Okay, yeah.
And are you into this? Let's do it. And the humans are just not getting it.
I wrote a book series that has something like that in it. Skyward.
Is it Skyward?
Yeah, Skyward. Before you have a child, they you get to see what the child grown up would be like by the two aliens like combine into a potential child who would be born. And
Yeah. So that's what they're doing.
Okay. That's part of the greeting aspect where it's like they haven't, they haven't said yes to we're trying to marry the earth.
Yeah.
And
we're trying to make this as clear as possible.
Yes.
This is what our kid would look like. And the humans still don't get it. Still don't pick it up.
I think it might just be, prize winners. Like you kid, you get to go. You get to go on the sea earth, and we're gonna do all this stuff, and now you get to meet the weird alien. Isn't that fun? And they aren't actually hybrids.
So the child.
That's just how Greys look when they're young.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a kid who won a contest.
Yes.
And he gets to go visit Earth.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they are so excited to, meet this. And from that kid's perspective, humans are naked and confused creatures.
Yes.
That's all they know about us.
I mean, we're taking my niece to, she loves walruses. We're going to go to San Diego. They have a walrus encounter where you can feed the walrus.
Oh, that's cool.
It's the equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it go, which, and the walrus is also naked and possibly confused. How do they protect you from the walrus?
No idea.
They're like the size of a car.
That they are. So who knows? Maybe walruses you don't need protection from walruses. Maybe there will be distance. Like, dolphins are big and heavy. And we had a dolphin encounter, and there was never any need to protect us from the dolphins.
But dolphins are renowned for their love of humans and their kindness, whereas walruses are renowned for murdering each other with their tusks.
I don't think they do as much murdering as maiming.
Well, that's true.
And I don't think any of us look like rival male walruses.
Speak for yourself, Brandon.
I guess we do have facial hair now. So
okay, so after the various tests have been performed and things have been presented, it is extremely common that the whole tenor of the situation will change.
Okay.
And the next step in the abduction narrative often has a sudden feeling of kindness, of almost like repaying you. I'm sorry we had to put you through this painful probing. Now we're going to give you a tour of the ship.
Interesting.
Or now we're going to give you, we're going to hold a little conference, or we're going to take you on a little flight around so you can see some planets or something, and then you come back.
Okay. And then, like, you kind of hover or something into your bed or whatnot. Don't I remember reading about that?
Sometimes. And what I love about the return portion of the narrative is that it talks about this is where errors will occur. And they call them errors. Where, in the vast majority, you are returned to the same place you were taken. But sometimes you'll show up somewhere else.
All these monkeys look alike.
Yeah,
so,
you'll show up outside of your house instead of inside.
Racist.
You'll show up with your pajamas on backwards or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And the Greys don't seem to wear clothes, so it makes sense that they wouldn't know how to put your pajamas back on you.
Right. So what do you think about all this? Like, why does it fascinate you so? Why have you been reading about it? What's there? What's making Dan tick?
What's interesting to me? I love the idea that this is modern folklore. In the same way that I have always, back when I was writing serial killer books, I would always describe serial killers as essentially the modern day vampires and werewolves and stuff. They are stories that we tell about people who look a lot like us, but they are secretly killers. They are predators on us. And, that's one of the reasons that I think people love watching true crime documentaries. They love stories about serial killers is because it fills that same niche that vampires and werewolves and stuff used to fill back in our history. And I think abduction scenarios fill a very similar niche for us.
Okay. When people were telling the stories, the morality tales, which are we don't get as many of in our kind of folklore studies now, but a lot in I guess I'll rephrase that. In folklore studies, we talk about it a lot, but people's understanding of a folklore doesn't include these.
Okay.
The vast majority of folklore stories, if I'd say, Grimm's fairy tale era folklore, you'll list off the fairy tales, right? Overwhelmingly, far more than that is stories about how you should follow the church's teachings.
Yeah.
The vast majority of these are, here's this priest, and this is what happens to this priest, and this person who didn't follow the priest, this happens to them, and the devil gets them.
Yeah.
We aren't as fascinated by those. They don't make as good a Disney retelling when the devil is directly involved. It's just a little too religious, it's harder to make into something fun. But I look back at those and I think, did the people telling those stories, did they understand that they were a metaphor? And I bet a lot of them did.
I think that they must have.
Yeah.
One of the reasons there are so many fairy tales about going into the dark, scary forest is because they were trying to teach kids not to wander off.
Right. And so I think we have a tendency to look back and be like, oh, those dumb people didn't understand, ha, ha, ha. But no, I think they did. So this distinguishes that from what you're talking about here, because there is folklore about this. But the primary source of this is not someone by the fireplace telling a story to keep kids out of the woods. It's someone who had an experience that is sharing it, that everyone else is morbidly fascinated in, this strange and creepy experience that they want to then share to creep themselves out.
Well, like I said at the beginning, I do think that a lot of those old folk tales and stuff were a way to try to explain the world.
Okay.
If you're living in the year 1200 and you have no idea what autism is, and your kid can't talk even though he's 5 years old, and he screams in public situations and doesn't know how to interact with everybody else, your explanation is, oh, I got a changeling child.
Okay.
The fairies left me this one.
Yeah.
They took my real kid.
Yep.
And
terrible, but a very
absolutely
real thing.
Terrible way to treat autistic children, but a way that they could have explained these things in their culture.
So what does this explain?
What does this explain? I think that this might be an explanation of sleep paralysis.
Okay.
I think it might be an explanation of, it might be an agnostic or non-religious way of touching the infinite, of having a big encounter with something that is larger and wiser and more advanced than you are.
Okay.
Because you can look back through history, and there's actually a Catholic priest or monk who has written an entire book about kind of demonic visitations that he says, according to his research and his interpretation, they are just kind of medieval alien abduction scenarios explained with, the stories of the time instead of our stories today.
That is fascinating. This was a really good topic.
Yeah.
So, you know who I think is probably an alien?
Who?
It's Ben.
I agree.